It was late, and the night in Salem fell like a heavy shroud of mist. I had just folded the wool blanket. The only sound left in the house was the steady ticking of the clock. Suddenly, the shrill ring of the phone tore through the silence. I hesitated before picking up. "Hello there," was no reply at first. Only a faint hiss and static. Then I clearly heard my daughter's voice. "Jennifer, don't worry. Honey. She'll sign. That beachfront house is worth at least $1.2 million. Just threaten her with the nursing home, she'll be scared." I froze, my hands trembling. On the other end, Eric, Jennifer's husband, let out a cold laugh that cut like a blade. "We have to be clever, use guilt to corner her. Guilt works every time." My heart clenched, as if someone was squeezing it tight. The house, the very place my husband and I once promised would be the family's lighthouse, had become nothing more than a prize to the very children I had raised with my blood, my tears, and my youth. Quietly, I set the receiver down, my whole body numb. I hadn't even caught my breath when suddenly, from the attic, came a faint sound, the place where I had kept David's old wooden box. I had never opened it since the day he passed. And tonight, when the world around me seemed to collapse, perhaps it was waiting for me to lift its lid. I sat motionless beside the phone I had just set down, my heart pounding as if it would tear out of my chest. Jennifer's and Eric's words kept ringing in my head, each phrase etched like a cut into my flesh. "She'll sign, just threaten the nursing home." I gripped the edge of the table to stop myself from bursting into tears. But then, like an automatic reflex, memories flooded back. I saw again the long stretch of my life, every drop of sweat, every broken sleep. Every small joy centered on one thing: this family. The day David died, the sky was as gray as tonight. The construction accident came without warning, with no farewell. They called me to the hospital and put his leather wallet into my hands. Still smelling of dust and metal, I sat there, looking at his face one last time, silently and with a pain so sharp I thought I couldn't breathe. Jennifer was 18 then, and Michael only 15. I would not allow myself to collapse. In my children's tearful eyes I saw clearly if I fell, everything would fall with me. I returned to my nursing work and took extra night shifts in the emergency room. Endless sleepless nights. The smell of antiseptic clinging to my skin like a coat I could never take off. There were times my legs were so exhausted I would slump into a chair and fall asleep on it. But I kept going. Because there were tuition bills, medical bills, bills for the plumbing, bills for a new furnace. Everything landed on my shoulders. There were years when I worked 3 jobs: night nurse, morning server, weekend kitchen help. People would ask if I was tired. I'd just smile and say, "Tired. But I have to keep going. I don't have a choice." This house, to me, was more than a place to live. It was proof of a life of endurance, of standing firm and not giving up. It was the lighthouse David had dreamed of. It held all my love and hopes for our children. And yet now, the very children I raised and protected whisper and call me a burden. Memories returned to a winter evening. Jennifer had finished her first semester at college and called home, "Mom, I want to come home for Christmas, but I don't have money for a ticket." I ran all over the hospital to take extra shifts, then sold the last thing David had given me, the pair of earrings he bought for our 10-year anniversary. The jeweler looked at me with pity, but I smiled and whispered, "It's worth it. I need to give my daughter a future." Jennifer came home, climbed off the bus, wrapped me in a hug, and said, "I will never forget what you did." Michael was different. He was quiet, more reserved, always hiding what he felt. I knew he dreamed too. But sometimes I worried he felt left behind while his sister got priority. I tried to make up for it with warm dinners and weekend trips to the beach. We would sit on the sand and look at the lighthouse out at sea. I used to say, "That is your father's light. No matter the storms, that light will guide our family." And so, I bought this beachfront house. Not luxurious or large, but with a wooden porch and windows that opened onto the ocean. David had once promised that if we could, he would give me a house like this, so that when I was tired, the sound of the waves would bring peace. I fulfilled that promise for him. I painted the walls myself, planted flowers along the fence, patched the roof after winter storms. Once, Jennifer helped me painting and laughing. "Mom, this house looks like a fairy tale." I believed then that at least I had given my children a solid foundation where they would feel safe. But reality was not rosy. Many nights, after both children had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table doing the math, worrying over every dollar. Tuition, medicine, a plumber, a new furnace. The burdens kept piling up. There were years I worked 3 jobs. When people asked if I was tired, I only smiled and said, "If I'm tired, I have to try. I don't have a choice." This house has always been more than shelter. It is the testament of a life of struggle and resilience. It is the lighthouse David dreamed of, and where I poured all my love and hopes for my children. And now, the same children I cherished call me a burden in whispered tones. A memory comes back of one winter night, after Jennifer's first semester. She called and said, "Mom, I want to come home for Christmas, but I don't have money for a ticket." I ran the hospital shifts, sold the last pair of earrings David had given me for our 10th anniversary. Jennifer returned, stepping off the bus, hugging me tight and saying, "I will never forget what you did." Michael had also made promises. The year he graduated high school, I took him to the beach. He held my hand and said, "Mom, when I grow up, I'll take care of you. You won't have to worry forever." I believed those words, that all my efforts would be remembered. Yet, tonight, hearing the scheme come from my daughter's own mouth, it felt as if the sky had fallen. It was not only betrayal, but a denial of my whole life, those silent sacrifices for which I never asked for repayment. I sat motionless, listening to distant waves hitting the rocks, thinking of David. Did he know that the children we raised together, the ones we taught to walk and talk, now view their mother as an obstacle to money? In that moment, my heart felt both aching and hollow. And then, the small sound in the attic rang out again, like a reminder. I looked up and thought of David's old wooden box, which I had never dared to open since the day he died. A strange urge came over me. I had to open it, to see what David had left for me. Perhaps, in this night of betrayal, the lighthouse he once promised still remained somewhere, waiting to shine on me once more. I still remember so clearly that afternoon, when Jennifer and her husband, Eric, walked into the house with 2 big suitcases and a strained smile. Jennifer hugged me tightly, as if trying to hide the defeat already written in her eyes. "Mom, the company downsized. And Eric just lost his job too. We can't afford the rent on our apartment right now. Can we stay here for a while?" I looked at my daughter, her hair falling over her shoulders, her voice trembling, while Eric stood behind her, silent, his face uneasy. Even though a flicker of unease rose in me, I still smiled and nodded. "This is your home. In hard times, family leans on each other. Come back, there's always a place for you here." The words came out softly, like a reflex from a mother who has always sacrificed. And so, from that day on, in the once quiet beachfront house, there were footsteps again, laughter, and changes I didn't notice at first. In the beginning, I truly believed it was the start of a reunion. Jennifer helped me cook, setting the dinner table with elaborate dishes she had picked up from the internet. Eric, looking a bit guilty, would bring home a bottle of wine or some fruit as a gift. Each night, we sat around the wooden kitchen table, listening to the waves in the distance, reminiscing about old memories. At times, I felt as though time had turned back and our family had returned to when life was full and close-knit. One evening, Jennifer held my hand and smiled brightly. "Mom, we're so lucky to have this house. Otherwise, we wouldn't know where to go. You truly are the biggest support in my life." Those words made my throat tighten. All my weariness seemed to melt away. I thought, maybe my sacrifices were finally being seen. Eric sometimes fixed little things around the house. He replaced light bulbs, adjusted the squeaky porch door, built a few small shelves in the kitchen. I didn't even have to ask. He did it on his own and even said, "Mrs. Turner, think of it as me giving back a little. This house needs a man's touch." I smiled, though something inside me hesitated, the way he said it, as if I were only the caretaker, not truly the owner. But I let it go, telling myself it was just a habit of speech. As time passed, those sweet gestures slowly became a new routine in the house. Jennifer began rearranging the living room, moving the sofa I had cherished for more than 10 years. She spoke lightly, "Mom, this way, it's brighter. And the ocean view feels more open. Don't you think it works better?" I nodded, though my heart tugged. That sofa was the one David and I had saved for months to buy. Still, I thought maybe my daughter just wants the house to feel lighter. Another day, I came home from work to find the front lock had been changed. I asked, surprised, "Why did you change the lock?" "Honey," Jennifer smiled brightly. "Mom, the old one was too loose. Eric worried about burglars, so he replaced it. Don't worry, I had another key made for you." I held the new key in my hand, a strange feeling creeping into me. This was my home, yet I was being handed the key by my own daughter. I almost said something, but seeing Jennifer's eager eyes, I swallowed the words and told myself, it's just for safety. From then on, in everyday conversations, I started hearing Jennifer and Eric use the words, "our house." At first, I thought it was a slip, but soon the phrase came more often. "Our house needs a fresh coat of paint," Eric said while standing on the porch. "We should think about replacing the furnace," Jennifer suggested over dinner. Once, they even joked, "One day, our kids will run all over this house." I sat there, forcing a smile, but inside I felt heavier. The words "our house" sounded so natural, as if this home had never been mine alone. One evening, as I quietly cleared the dishes, Jennifer came up behind me, wrapping her arms around me. Her voice, "Sweet Mom, I know it's been hard for you to keep this house, but now you have us, you don't need to worry so much. Just think of it as our home." "Okay," I froze, the plate nearly slipping from my hand. I didn't know how to respond. Was that sweetness true concern, or just the opening note of something else? That night, I couldn't sleep. The sound of the ocean outside was steady, but inside me rose a strange echo. I realized a fragile line was slowly being erased, the line between letting them stay and losing ownership altogether. A few weeks later, I came home from a shift and saw that the pale blue curtains, ones David had chosen, were gone. In their place hung sleek gray ones. Jennifer beamed, "Mom, what do you think? I thought this color fits the furniture better. Our house looks so much more elegant now." I looked at the new curtains, my throat tightening. I remembered David. We remembered how he once said, "This blue is like the sea every morning when you wake. You'll feel peace." And now, that peace had been replaced by something foreign. "Mom, you don't like it?" Jennifer asked, looking uncertain. I forced a smile. "If you like it, then leave it." I turned away, hiding the tears welling up. And so, little by little, details in the house changed. The family photos on the shelves disappeared, replaced by frames of Jennifer and Eric on their trips. The kitchen filled with things they had bought. And I kept telling myself, don't make a fuss. Family matters more. But deep down, I knew what I was losing wasn't just objects. It was pieces of memory, pieces of ownership, pieces of myself. One afternoon, I came home after a long shift at the clinic. There was a stack of mail on the kitchen table. I opened it out of habit. But when I looked closely, my heart sank. The electric, water, and gas bills, all of them were in the name of Eric Turner, Jennifer's husband. I rubbed my eyes, thinking I must be mistaken. But I wasn't. Even the envelope was printed clearly, Mr. Eric Turner, 145 Seaside Avenue. That is my address. The address tied to so many memories of David and me. Yet my name had been replaced by that of someone not of our blood. I held the paper and went into the living room where Jennifer was watching TV. Jennifer. Why are the bills in Eric's name? I asked. Trying to keep my voice steady, Jennifer paused for a moment, then turned to me with a small smile. Oh. He's called a few times to pay lately. The company just switched the account to his name since it was convenient. Don't worry. It's easier to manage that way. But this is my house. All the paperwork has always been in my name, I said. Jennifer nodded and smiled. I know, Mom. But you're a nurse and you're busy. And Eric is home more now. Having him handle things makes it easier for you. Don't worry. You're still the owner. Her words sounded sweet. But a vague unease rose in me. Why was it convenient for them? But inconvenient for me. I put the stack of bills in the drawer, my hands still trembling. Not long after, Jennifer and Eric unexpectedly sat down at the table with me. There was something strange in the air at dinner that night, as if the room felt heavier than usual. Eric cleared his throat and began. Mom, we were thinking, maybe you should move down to the basement. I set my spoon down and looked up, thinking I must have misheard. The basement, why would that be? Jennifer jumped in with a gentle tone. Mom, the main bedroom upstairs is spacious and gets a lot of light. We're thinking of having a baby, so that room would be very convenient. The basement is cool and roomy. Summer will be more comfortable for you. Eric nodded and added, at your age, the cool basement would be easier on your knees than going up and down stairs every day. Don't you think so? I looked at them, my heart wrenching. The basement, where I kept old things, dark and damp, was suddenly being suggested as a suitable place for me to live, the owner of the house. Do you really think it's okay to suggest that to me? This is my room. This is the room your father and I lived in. My voice broke. Jennifer reached for my hand, looking earnest. Mom, we don't mean anything by it. We just think it would be more convenient for you downstairs. We want you to rest more and not have to climb the stairs. We only want to take care of you. But in Eric's eyes I didn't see concern. I saw calculation. He avoided looking at me and kept picking at his food, as if the suggestion were just a reasonable proposal, nothing to argue about. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in the main bedroom, the one they wanted to turn into a nursery for an unborn child, and looked around at the marks David had left, the patch of wall he'd started to paint, the window he'd replaced. I felt myself being pushed out. The next day, I checked the other bills. It wasn't just electric and water, internet service, trash service. Everything had been switched to Eric's name. I called the utility company to ask why. They told me, we received a request to change the account holder from someone living at that address. And because Mr. Turner provided payment information, we updated it. I was silent, a coldness running down my spine. Bit by bit, they were removing my name from my own house. That evening, I came home to find Eric standing on the porch, smoking. He smiled easily. Mrs. Turner, I just paid the gas bill for the month. Everything's on autopay now, don't worry about a thing. Enjoy your retirement. I answered quietly, trying to stay calm. But don't you think I want to handle things myself? This is still my house. Eric looked at me, squinted slightly, then laughed. Of course, you're the owner. But you should let us share the burden. No one wants to see you struggling. It sounded reasonable. But I felt it clearly every time Eric said share. What he really meant was take over. In the following days, I began to pay closer attention. The fridge filled with foods. Jennifer chose things I didn't recognize. A work desk appeared in the living room with papers that weren't mine. Once, I came home early and heard Jennifer on the phone to a friend. Yeah. We love our house by the sea. It's perfect. I stood silently behind the door, my heart aching. Our house. Those two words cut deeper than anything. One afternoon I went out to the garden to cut some carnations, David's favorite, but found Jennifer had dug them out and planted white roses instead. I asked, "Why did you pull out the carnations I planted?" Jennifer smiled as if it were no big deal. "Mom, the carnations were old. I thought roses would suit the garden better. See, it looks more elegant." I said nothing. I only stared at the empty patch of earth where so many memories had been. Now, only the scars of the uprooted plants remained. Day by day, I felt more like a guest in my own home. They arranged, renovated, and decided. I sat on the sidelines, nodding or staying quiet. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, Jennifer knocked and came in, her voice sweet but carrying a firm undertone. "Mom, we really think you should seriously consider moving down to the basement. We've already cleared a little space, just say yes." I looked at my daughter and didn't recognize the gaze I used to know. As a child, Jennifer used to be afraid of the dark and crawl into my bed trembling. Now she wanted to push me into a cold basement. I sat up straight and replied slowly, "Jennifer, this is my room. This is my home. I'm not going anywhere." She was silent for a few seconds, then gave a small smile. But it wasn't the smile of the daughter I once knew. That night I listened to the distant sound of waves instead of peace. Each crash felt like a hammer blow to my heart. I was beginning to realize that my first unease had not been baseless. I was gradually becoming unnecessary in the very home I had made. One early morning, before the sun had risen above the horizon, I decided to climb up to the attic to look for some old boxes. Ever since Jennifer and Eric had moved in, I had hardly wanted to go up there. But today, I don't know why, something urged me. I pulled down the folding ladder, climbed up, and carefully opened the old wooden door. The smell of dust and decaying wood rose up, making me cough. Light streamed in through the small window, falling across cartons and old suitcases I had stacked years ago. I sat down, opened one box after another, touching layers of memories covered in dust. David's shirts, Michael's old Lego sets, Jennifer's notebooks, filled with her messy handwriting from grade school. Just as I was about to go back down, my eyes caught sight of a small wooden box in the dark corner, thick with dust. I recognized it instantly, the box David had guarded so carefully. He never told me exactly what was inside. After the day he died, I never dared open it. Maybe because I was afraid to touch the wound that had never healed. I picked it up and carried it to my bedroom. My hands trembled as I brushed away the thick dust. The lid gave a faint click as I opened it. Inside, besides a few small keepsakes like his old pocket watch and the silver ring he once wore, there was a pale yellow envelope. On the envelope, David's familiar handwriting appeared. "If one day you feel this house is no longer safe, go to Attorney Samuel Price. I have prepared everything for you." I froze. My heart pounded, each beat like a drum in my chest. I touched the words, each shaky stroke seeming to hold his last breath. Why had David written this? What had he foreseen? I sank onto the bed and opened the letter. The paper had yellowed, but the faint scent of ink still lingered. My dearest Maggie, I don't know when, or under what circumstances, you will open this letter, but I want to make sure that even if I'm no longer here, you are still protected. This house is not just a shelter. It is proof of everything we endured together. If one day you feel your place in this house slipping away, if anyone tries to make you believe it no longer belongs to you, go see Samuel Price. I've already worked with him to ensure everything. You are never alone. Maggie. And this house will always be yours. I love you. David. Tears poured down my face, soaking the page. All these years I had lived in worry, pushing myself for the children, never imagining that David had quietly prepared such a safe path for me. A soft knock sounded at the door. Jennifer peeked in. Mom. Are you okay? I heard some noise. I quickly wiped my tears, folded the letter, and placed it back in the box. I was just sorting through a few things. It's nothing. Jennifer stepped inside, her eyes darting to the box on the table. She gave a thin smile. Oh. That box is still here. I remember I used to try to play with it when I was little, but Dad never let me touch it. I pressed the lid shut tightly and answered curtly. Some things are best left as they are. Jennifer shrugged, smiling, but I caught the curiosity in her eyes. I turned away, quickly locking the box in a drawer, then left the room with a new resolve forming inside me. The next day, I searched through David's old address book. Sure enough, on the last page was a handwritten note, Samuel Price, Salem. Ma. Beside it, a phone number blurred with age. I sat for a long time, my finger tracing the numbers. Fear and hope tangled inside me. If what David wrote was true, then maybe I still had a way out. That afternoon, when Jennifer and Eric went out, I locked the door, took a deep breath, and dialed the number. On the other end, a steady, middle-aged man's voice answered, Law Office of Samuel Price. My voice shook. Hello. This is Margaret Turner. I think my husband, David Turner, contacted you years ago. There was a pause, a few seconds long. Then Mr. Price's voice came. Slow, but certain. Yes. Mrs. Turner. I know. I've been waiting for this call for many years. My throat tightened, and tears flowed again. David truly had prepared, and Mr. Price still remembered. We arranged to meet the following morning. After hanging up, I sat for a long time in the quiet room, clutching the wooden box. Inside me were both anxiety and the flicker of new light. For the first time in months, I felt I wasn't completely trapped. That evening, when Jennifer came home and walked into the kitchen where I was cooking, she smiled brightly. Mom, I got an email from the bank today. They were asking about the house mortgage. Did you notice that I stiffened? I had never discussed any mortgage. Her question made it clear they were planning further than I thought. I forced a smile. I still manage everything. You don't need to worry. Jennifer frowned slightly, then quickly masked it with cheer. But I knew David's letter had not come to me by accident. Perhaps now was the time I truly had to open my eyes. That night, I lay in bed, holding the letter to my chest. Offshore, the lighthouse swept its beam across the sky. I whispered, David, you knew. You took care of me before I even knew I needed it. I won't let you down. And for the first time after countless nights of unease, I fell asleep without being surrounded only by darkness. That night was late. The house was quiet, with only the sound of waves in the distance and the steady ticking of the clock. I sat in my room, reading David's letter for the 10th time, feeling both comforted and worried about what lay ahead. Jennifer and Eric had gone out for dinner. I thought I would have a peaceful evening. But then, close to 10 o'clock, I heard the door open. Footsteps. And Jennifer's laughter, carrying up with Eric's voice from the living room. I quietly stepped out, intending to go to the kitchen for a glass of water. When I froze at the sound of Jennifer's voice, she didn't know I was near the stairs. Eric, I told you. If she refuses to sign, just threaten her with the nursing home. She's terrified of being alone. Just mention that place. And I'm sure she'll fold immediately. I went cold. My whole body jolted as if struck by electricity. I pressed my hand to the wall, my head spinning. But in that moment, a strange clarity took over. I pulled my phone from my pocket and quietly switched on the recorder. My fingers trembled so badly I nearly dropped it. But I gripped hard, forcing myself to stay silent. Eric's voice came. Low, but distinct. Yeah. You're right. Just play on her fear. Besides, she always feels guilty that we cover so many expenses. Just bring up tuition back then. Remind her, we pay the bills. She's soft, easy to manipulate. Jennifer chuckled. Satisfied, guilt works every time. I know Mom well. She won't dare argue. One signature. And this house will be ours. I bit my lip until it bled, holding back a sob. In my mind, David's words echoed. If one day you feel this house is no longer safe, now I understood. Somehow, he had known. And here I was, living in the very moment he foresaw. I stepped back, pressing into the shadows, my heart pounding. The recording continued, each word slicing into me like a knife. Eric spoke again, his voice calculating. Once we have a kid, she'll have to move to the basement anyway. No one lets an old lady keep the main bedroom. Then it'll be even easier to push her to sign. Jennifer laughed, laced with disdain. I've already thought it through. Once the contract's done, we can get a loan, renovate, even sell if we want. This house is our golden ticket. I clutched the phone tighter, torn between anguish and clarity. All the hints, the bills in Eric's name, the new locks. The talk of the basement fell into place like puzzle pieces. There was no doubt now. They wanted to strip away the only thing I had left, the home David and I had fought to keep. I returned to my room and collapsed into a chair, my vision blurred with tears. But inside, a strange fire sparked. I no longer felt weak. I had proof, and I would not be cornered. A gentle knock came at the door. Jennifer peeked in, smiling sweetly. Mom, you're still up. I was thinking tomorrow we could talk about remodeling the living room. Our house should be a little more modern. I lifted my head and looked straight into her eyes. For an instant, I wanted to hurl every word I had just heard back at her. But I held it in. Not yet. I only nodded lightly. Sure. Tomorrow. I'm tired now. Jennifer smiled, shut the door, and left me alone in the dark. I exhaled, clutching the phone to my chest. The recording was there, intact. Their voices chillingly clear. I played it again, hearing the words, nursing home, burden. One signature searing them into my memory. Each time I listened, my resolve hardened. Outside, the ocean waves thundered. But inside me rose an unusual calm. Not just pain, determination. I thought of Samuel Price, of David's letter. Perhaps the time for hesitation had passed. Perhaps the moment had come to turn pain into action. That night I didn't sleep. I sat at the desk, writing down every detail, the date, the time, the contents of the conversation I had recorded. I knew evidence only mattered if preserved. I made a copy, sent it to a private email Jennifer and Eric didn't know about. I saved another on a small USB drive and hid it at the bottom of my jewelry box. When the clock passed midnight, I stood and looked around the familiar room, the room they wanted to turn into a nursery. But I knew it was the room that held the memories of my life with David. and I would not let anyone take it. In the darkness, I whispered, David, rest easy. I have the proof. I will protect this house. I won't let them make me a stranger in my own life. Through the window, the lighthouse beam flashed across the sky, casting a silver streak into the room. I followed it with my eyes, my heart steadier. Tomorrow, I would call Samuel. Tomorrow, the game would enter a new stage. That morning, just as I was about to call Samuel Price to discuss the details further, the doorbell rang insistently. I wasn't expecting anyone, nor could I imagine who it might be. When I stepped onto the porch, I froze at the familiar face, Michael, my youngest son, who had been away for years, living in Texas. Mom. His voice was deeper now, a little hoarse, but still familiar. He stood there with a suitcase in hand, his eyes carrying both weariness and hesitation. I broke down crying right there, unable to hold back. I threw my arms around him, feeling as though the collapsing sky above me had finally found a support. Michael, you're home. You're finally home. He patted my shoulder lightly. But the embrace wasn't as firm as I longed for. His eyes flicked past me, scanning the house as though weighing something. Jennifer hurried out from the living room, her face surprised but quickly lighting up. Oh my gosh. Michael. Why didn't you tell us you were coming? Eric followed, extending his hand. Hey there. It's been a long time. Great to see you back. Michael shook his hand loosely, then pulled his suitcase inside. I quickly made space and invited him to sit. A spark of hope lit inside me. Maybe Michael's return would change everything. He would understand me. He would stand on my side. That evening, I cooked the dishes he used to love: honey-roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and apple pie. Michael ate little, mostly sitting quietly, glancing around, listening to his sister and brother-in-law talk. After dinner, when it was just the two of us in the kitchen, I held his hand, my voice trembling. Michael, I'm so glad you're back. I've been through so much. Jennifer and Eric, they want to take this house. I have proof. You have to believe me. He set his fork down and looked up at me, his gray-blue eyes glinting with something I couldn't read. Mom, you're always talking about this house. When I was little, all you ever did was work, pay bills, and fight to keep the house. But what about us? Did you ever really listen to me? I froze, my heart shattering. You're blaming me. I sacrificed everything for you. I sold my wedding ring. I worked night shifts. Michael cut me off, his voice tight but firm. I know you did a lot. But did you ever ask what I wanted? I didn't need this house. I needed a mom who was there for the important moments. But you were always at the hospital or working. And now, when I finally come back, you're still only talking about the house. I stepped back, my hand trembling at my side. His words pierced like a blade. I had hoped for an anchor, but instead, my youngest son saw me and this house as nothing more than a burden of the past. Jennifer walked in, slipping her arm around her brother's shoulders, her voice sweet. See, Michael, I told you. Mom is always clinging to this house. We just want her to be comfortable. But she refuses to let go. Michael sighed, avoiding my eyes. Maybe you're right. This house holds Mom back too much. Maybe it's time for a change. I dropped into a chair, burying my face in my hands. My heart collapsed. I thought I had found an ally. But now, both of my children had turned away. In my mind, David's voice echoed Maggie. This house is the lighthouse. Don't let it go dark. But that light felt so far away, smothered by shadows closing in. Michael didn't stop there. The next morning at breakfast, he said plainly, Mom, I think you should reconsider. If you sell the house, you'll have money. You can rest. And you won't have to worry anymore. We won't have to carry the burden either. Jennifer jumped in quickly. Her tone soft. Michael's right. We'll find a comfortable place for you. No one wants you to suffer. I looked at my 2 children, the ones I had cradled, raised with all my youth. And now, they were planning to move me out of my own house, as if I were just an old piece of furniture. Tears welled. But I refused to let them fall. I only stared at the phone in my pocket where the recording remained. Cold and undeniable. I took a deep breath and spoke slowly. I see now. You've already made up your minds. But don't forget, I'm still here. And this house is still mine. The air grew thick. Michael looked down, avoiding me. Jennifer pressed her lips tight, her eyes flashing with irritation. Eric just sat there, the corner of his mouth curling like someone who had already won a game of chess. That night, I sat alone in my room, replaying the recording, my hands trembling but my eyes growing sharper. My heart ached because my youngest son had turned against me too. But that pain only made me clearer than ever. I whispered to myself, fine. If my children see me as a burden, then I'll show them what a burden can do. That morning, while Jennifer and Eric were still fast asleep, I quietly left the house. I didn't take much, just a small bag with the recording, David's letter, and a few important papers. Outside, the ocean wind cut sharp and cold, the crashing waves against the rocks, reminding me this was no longer a safe place. I drove to Attorney Samuel Price's office, a modest red brick building on the corner of Old Salem. A polished brass plate on the door read clearly, Attorney at Law, Samuel J. Price. Stepping inside, the smell of old paper and coffee mixed in the air, carrying me back to another time. A middle-aged man with silver at his temples and wire-rimmed glasses looked up as I entered. He set down his coffee cup, his eyes bright yet calm. Mrs. Turner, I'm Price. I've been expecting this day. I sat across from him, my hands clasped tightly to hide their trembling. David mentioned you in his letter. I don't fully understand. But he said if one day I felt this house was no longer safe, I should come to you. Price nodded, opened a drawer, and took out an old file, carefully sealed in plastic. That's right. Nearly 20 years ago, your husband came to me. He wanted to ensure the house could never be transferred without your consent. He called it a hidden clause. My eyes widened. Hidden clause. What does that mean? He explained gently. In the purchase contract and the deed, there's an embedded provision. No one can alter ownership of the house unless you personally sign, with a valid notary certification. Even if someone lives with you, pays the bills, or pressures you, they cannot force you. I sat in stunned silence. It felt as though a boulder had been lifted from my shoulders. David had seen further than I ever imagined. He knew I wouldn't have the strength to resist if pushed. And now? Price confirmed I was the sole owner. Tears streamed down my face. I whispered, David, you protected me to the very end. Price continued, his voice steady, but I understand. If you're here today, things must be very serious. Tell me everything. I pulled out my phone and played the recording. In the quiet room, Jennifer's voice rang out clearly. If she refuses to sign, just say nursing home. She's terrified of being alone. Then Eric's voice followed. Remind her about tuition, about bills. She'll give in. One signature, and it's done. Price's face darkened, his eyes sharp as a blade. When the recording ended, he set his pen on the desk and looked me straight in the eye. Mrs. Turner, this is gold. Not only does it prove their intent, it can protect you from any legal dispute. I nodded, trembling yet resolute. I don't want lawsuits. I just want peace. I can't live under the same roof with people who see me as a burden. Price thought for a moment, then said, "There is a way. You could sell the house. I'll connect you with a trusted investor. Someone who will purchase quickly. All the proceeds will go into a trust account in your name, only you can withdraw. No one else, not even your children, can touch it." I was stunned. Sell the house. But it's David's lighthouse. Price leaned forward, his voice calm yet firm. Sometimes, to keep a promise, you have to choose a different way. The lighthouse isn't in brick walls or wooden porches. It's in your resolve, in your choice to protect yourself. David wouldn't want you harmed by those you love. His words cut through the fog in my heart like a blade. I sat silent for a long time, then nodded. "Help me." That very morning, we began planning. Price contacted a trusted investor, Marcus Evans, known for buying old properties to redevelop. Marcus had a reputation for discretion and fairness. We arranged a private meeting for the weekend. Price noted every detail, carefully timing. Legal procedures. How to prevent Jennifer and Eric from finding out. You must prepare yourself. When they discover this, they'll react fiercely. But by then, it will be finished. They'll have no rights left. I nodded, gripping my hands together. Fear swelled inside me, but so did relief. After months of being cornered, I finally saw a way out. When I left the office, the street wind whipped my hair. But I didn't feel cold. I felt carried by an unseen strength. David's, mine, and the truth itself. That evening, I returned home to find Jennifer and Michael in the living room. Talking, Jennifer laughed brightly, while Michael stayed quiet. When I entered, Jennifer turned, her voice syrup-sweet. "Mom, we've talked it over. If you agree to sign, everything will be so much easier for everyone. You won't have to worry anymore." I sat down, meeting her eyes for the first time without trembling. "I'll think about it. But remember this, the house is still mine." Jennifer froze briefly, then forced a smile. I turned away, heading to my room, my heart pounding but proud. In my pocket, the recording was still safe. And in my mind, the plan was already set. That night, I gathered my most precious things, the family photo albums, David's wooden chair, a few old books, a few small pieces of jewelry. I packed them carefully into boxes and hid them deep in the closet. Outside, the ocean roared. But this time the sound didn't unsettle me. It felt like a farewell song, signaling a new journey. I whispered, "David, I'll do as you wanted. I'll keep the light my own way." That evening, the house blazed with light. Jennifer had prepared a grand dinner. Fresh flowers covered the table. The smell of roasted meat mingled with wine. Candles flickered brightly on the shelves. She called it a special family dinner. I sat alone in my room, listening to the clinking of dishes, the bursts of laughter echoing. When I stepped out, Jennifer was dressed to perfection. A blazing red dress and lips painted bold. Eric stood beside her, smiling with confidence. Michael was there too, looking uneasy, but seated at the table with them. Jennifer raised her glass, her voice ringing with excitement. "Tonight, I want the family to talk about something important. Our home is about to begin a new chapter. Eric and I found an architect to renovate the house, to make it modern and spacious. This will be the start of a new generation for our family." Polite applause broke out from a few friends Jennifer had invited. I looked around, my heart twisting. Our family, but in their eyes, I was no longer part of it. I sat down, setting my bag beside me. Jennifer continued on, laying out design sketches and glossy photos. In them, my bedroom was marked nursery, while the basement was labeled guest room, the place they planned to put me. I drew in a long breath, opened my bag, and set my phone on the table. No one noticed until the recording began to play. Cutting through Jennifer's voice. "She's a burden. We'll push her into a nursing home." The room froze. The sharp clatter of silverware hitting plates broke the silence. Jennifer's face drained. Her eyes wide. Fixed on the phone, as though it were a ghost. Eric stiffened. His hand gripping his wine glass so tightly it cracked. Michael sat rigid. His face changing quickly. He looked at his sister. Then at Eric. Shock written in his eyes. "Jen, you really said that? And you brother-in-law, that's your voice," Jennifer stammered. No. It's not what you think. It was just a joke." I pressed the button. And the recording rolled on. Eric's cold voice filled the room, remind her about tuition. About bills. One signature. "And this house will be ours." The air turned suffocating. I lifted my head. Looked straight at Jennifer. And spoke firmly. Each word like a blade. "This house has been sold. And in it, there's no room left for betrayal." The room erupted. Jennifer shot up. Her face red. Shouting, "You betrayed us. You sold this house without even telling us." I rose slowly. Answering with calm, but cutting clarity, "No. You betrayed me long ago. When you saw me as a burden. When you plotted to push me into a nursing home. This house was never yours. It was mine. And I chose to protect it not for you. But for myself." Jennifer shook with rage. Glancing to Michael for support. "Michael, can't you see Mom just destroyed our family legacy? She abandoned us." Michael didn't answer at once. He lowered his head. Fists clenched. I saw his lips move as if wrestling with himself. At last. He spoke softly. His voice strained. "But that really is your voice. You said you wanted to put Mom in a nursing home. You plotted this house like it was your own. How can I defend you?" Jennifer faltered. Her eyes brimming. But I knew it wasn't remorse. It was fury at being exposed. Eric stayed silent until his fist slammed on the table. His words came sharp. Each one bitten off, "Mrs. Turner. You had no right to do this. This is the family's house." I turned to him. Meeting his eyes head on. "Wrong. This was never your house. It belongs to me and only me. And now, it's gone. You'll never touch it again." Silence fell. Broken only by the distant crash of the ocean. Jennifer wept. But those tears carried anger. Not sorrow. She screamed, "You stole everything from us," I answered. My voice low. Slicing through like steel, "No. You stole everything yourselves when you forgot your mother was not your property." Michael stood. His chair scraping with a long screech. He looked at me. Torn. Then turned away without another word. I picked up my phone. Slipped it into my bag. The room remained hushed. The candle flames trembling. I looked around once more. Drew in a deep breath. And walked out of the dining room, leaving behind the shouting. The glares of anger. And the betrayal laid bare. I left Salem on a misty March morning. A small truck, carrying a few boxes, rolling down the familiar coastal road. In the rearview mirror, I looked back at the house one last time, the wooden porch. The windows facing the sea. The trellis now replaced with the white roses Jennifer had planted. My heart ached. But there was no longer torment. I had said goodbye long ago. Leaving only a firm nod to myself. Portland welcomed me with a light drizzle. The scent of damp wood and coffee drifting through the narrow streets. I rented a modest apartment on the 3rd floor of a red brick building. A large window overlooked a park, where each morning I heard children laughing and bicycles rattling over cobblestone paths. No more waves. No more lighthouse, but I found another kind of stillness. The apartment was small. Just enough for a wooden table. An old armchair I bought at a flea market. and the bookshelf I had brought from Salem. I arranged everything carefully. Hung a few pictures of David and the children when they were little. Not much, but enough for the room to breathe with my spirit. Not anyone else's. On my third day in Portland, I happened to step into a nearby community center. The bulletin board was covered with flyers, yoga classes for seniors, support groups for women who had faced abuse, meetings about boundaries and self-respect. I read each word slowly, as if hearing my own name called. A week later, I sat in a round room at the center, surrounded by 12 women of different ages. They held paper cups of tea, sitting on wooden chairs, listening to each other. One spoke of a husband who had left, another of children who had turned their backs, another who had just learned to say no after decades of living to please others. When my turn came, my throat tightened. I could only manage a few words. My name is Maggie. I lost myself for a long time, but now, I want to learn to stand up for myself. No applause. No rushed advice. Only their eyes. Warm and steady. Nodding. And that alone made my heart feel lighter. In the weeks that followed, I came regularly. I listened more than I spoke. One evening, a young woman named Anna shared about being treated as a burden by her family after her divorce. She broke down, her shoulders shaking. I stepped forward, placed a hand on her shoulder, and whispered, "You are not a burden. You are a person with worth of your own. Don't let anyone make you forget that." And in saying it, I realized I was speaking to myself as well. One spring evening, the center's manager, a wise older woman named Sabria, called me aside after a meeting. She smiled kindly, her deep eyes bright. "Maggie, you have a voice people trust. We need someone to sit with the new single mothers who come here. You don't have to advise. Just listen and share." "Could you do that?" I hesitated, then nodded. And from that day on, I began volunteering, spending a few sessions each week sitting with women adrift, listening to the pains only they could name. I didn't give them answers. I shared pieces of my own life, not the sharpest wounds, but moments enough for them to know they were not alone. And strangely, the more I spoke, the more I felt my own scars knitting closed. Michael began calling again after a few months. At first, only a short message, "Mom. Are you okay?" I read it, but didn't reply right away. A week later, he actually called. His voice was hesitant. "Mom, I'm sorry. I said things I shouldn't have. I was just tired. And I took it out on you." I stayed silent for a long time. Inside me rose a flood of feelings: love, hurt, sorrow. Finally, I spoke slowly. "Michael, I didn't lose you, but I did lose the illusion of you. And maybe you need to lose the illusion of me, too. I'm not a fortress. I can be hurt." On the other end was silence. Only his sigh. I didn't hang up. But I didn't soothe him either. I let the silence speak. And for the first time, I realized I no longer begged for his recognition. Days in Portland passed slowly but fully. I woke early, brewed a pot of tea, sat by the window watching the fog lift from the park. I read. I wrote in my journal. No voices pushing, no eyes judging, only me. And a small space that was entirely mine. One autumn afternoon, with golden leaves covering the street, I sat alone at my wooden table, opened the old leather notebook I had brought from Salem, and turned to a blank page. My hand trembled slightly as I wrote. I didn't lose my children. I only lost the illusion of them. What I found again was myself. I set down the pen, drawing in a deep breath. Outside, the sunset poured through the window, bathing the small room in gold. For the first time in years, I no longer felt like someone abandoned. I felt free. Every family carries cracks that are hard to put into words. My story might remind you of yourself, or of a mother or grandmother who quietly sacrificed her whole life. But in the end, what I realized is this: sometimes, to preserve love, we must learn to say enough, to stand up and protect our own worth. I want to hear your thoughts. If you were in this situation, what would you choose: to quietly endure for the sake of peace, or to step forward and reclaim your dignity? Share your opinion in the comments. Your words might give strength to someone out there who needs it. And if you want to keep following these real-life stories full of trials, where trust is tested and family bonds sometimes come at the cost of tears, subscribe to Shattered Trust. Here, every story is not just about a fracture, but about the journey to reclaim pride, courage, and the light within the heart.